Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to wish you a warm welcome to the Nordic-Baltic Western Balkans Erasmus Plus Contact Seminar and Higher Education Fair. It is a great pleasure of the national agencies that are present here today and of us national Erasmus Plus offices that we are able to join to welcome you here in this first contact seminar organized ever in Serbia. And we are also very fortunate that here with us there are representatives also of the Ministry of Education, Science and Technological Development and EU Delegation to the Republic of Serbia. So I would like to ask Professor Vera Dondur, the State Secretary of the Ministry of Education, Science and Technological Development, to address us and so that we can start our program today. Professor Dondur, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear guests, welcome to this event. And first of all, I would like to thank our colleagues, especially Helene Skikos, our colleagues from Nordic countries, for this very important event for us. Why? We want to cooperate with our colleagues with many countries, but we don't know how. And for us, it's important to know how is organized higher education in some countries. And I think the many people in this hall today knows separate country. But this event is an occasion to see a group of countries which are not well known to our academic community, which are not known for our students. And for us, this fair and this presentation, higher education systems in the countries like Finland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Norway, and Denmark, and Iceland, it's an opportunity to meet our colleagues, to meet the maybe different higher education system, to see how is organized mobility of the students, how they organize the mobility of the teachers. As you know, Serbia is a country with huge brain drain, especially higher education people. And we are not satisfied for such things. Our students are thinking just to finish the study and to go somewhere. They are not comfortable in our country. It's not good for us, it's not good for our society. And for our students, Erasmus Plus is a good chance to go somewhere, to see the culture, to learn something, to educate, to meet the people, to make friendships, and to come to our country again. And to invite other colleagues from foreign countries to study here, not to all studies, maybe to be several months or several days in our country and to meet us. It is my great pleasure to be here today, especially because the people from many universities are here. People from our neighbor countries are here, and also the people from the Baltic countries are here. I hope that our guests will enjoy in this, our beautiful city, enjoyed in discussion with us, and I believe that it was the first time to meet such a Nordic countries here, and to continue very successful cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Dondur, and I would also like to thank the Ministry for their support to this event, but also to the implementation of the Erasmus Plus in Serbia. The implementation of the Erasmus Plus is, of course, managed by the European Commission, and here in Serbia we are also very grateful to the colleagues from the EU delegation, and I would like also to ask Mrs. Jelica to address us.
Dear Madam Dondur, dear colleagues, dear students and friends, it is my great pleasure to address to you on behalf of the delegation of the European Union to the Republic of Serbia, and I'm very pleased to see that you are here today in such a great number. I will be very brief in just reminding that the EU delegation in Serbia and the European Commission as such is putting a great importance in the education sector. The figures for the EU assistance that is so far given to the Republic of Serbia goes as far as 75 million euros by today's date, and I would like just to mention that a big part of it is actually part of the Erasmus+, Erasmus Mundus and Tempus project in the past. I wanted just to stress, because I'm pretty sure that today our colleagues will give a thorough presentation, so different programs, different opportunities, that for the EU delegation, what is important is the name of this event, which has in its title the word contact. I would like to emphasize that for us, I see the most important thing is that you get in contact with each other, that you create some I would say, alliances and I presume also friendships, which will then encourage you to make a better application in the future, because we know that contacting and networking is the main, let's say, the main force that is driving you towards the good projects. The EU delegation in Serbia has important projects here. I would just like to mention that we have very good results, but some of very important results that we were fighting in the past is the opening of the Diploma Recognition Center in Serbia. Serbian students now that were studying abroad has a very easy possibility to recognize their diploma, which was in the past a problem. So I would like to congratulate the Ministry for this step and to emphasize that the Serbian students coming back to Serbia will not encounter any more problems in this area. I would also like to mention that the Serbian participation in the EU programs was so far very good. I'm pretty positive that my colleagues from the offices here will remind you of the good results they have. And I wish all of you a good stay in Belgrade and also a good cooperation in the future.
Mrs. Solic, thank you very much for very nice words, and also for reminding us that the recognition issue is important. It is not maybe in terms of the employability important in the credit mobility, but still the recognition issue is one of the hottest issues in the credit mobility. And now we are coming to our keynote speaker, Mrs. Helene Skikos from the European Commission, Directorate General for Education and Culture, that is going to inform you about the Erasmus Plus opportunities for providing support to higher education cooperation. Mrs. Skikos, please.
Good morning. It's lovely to be back in Serbia. It's lovely to be back in Belgrade. I say back because I was here last year in the same hotel when we had presented the results of Tempus program and other higher education programs in the region. It's almost becoming familiar, like a home away from home. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you to the organizers. I'm very pleased with this initiative to bring North and South Europe together. We know the programs, and I will present them presented later, but they haven't changed a great deal over time. And you have excellent National Erasmus Plus office here that will come to your universities and present to you what the opportunities are. You have very capable and excellent national agencies back in the European Union who will do the same. What is important, as the representative from the ministry said, is that we bring people together. And this is a great initiative that I hope will be repeated later again. As a matter of fact, we're planning to repeat it in December in Vienna, where we will be bringing more people from the Western Balkans with more countries from throughout the European Union. The objective of this seminar is to bring people together, to give you an opportunity to network, to hopefully then come up with and develop ideas, which will hopefully be born into project proposals and maybe longer-term cooperation under the Erasmus Plus program. Or, as we say for our preparation in the Vienna conference, we're going to have speed dating, hopefully some engagement, and maybe even marriages at the end of the conferences. My presentation will be in two parts. The first part will be an overview of the cooperation opportunities under Erasmus Plus, not in detail, in general, but at the end there will be time for questions, and I will prefer to leave time to answer your specific questions. And the second part of my presentation will be on why we do this. Why do we have our programs opened up to the Western Balkans, Erasmus Plus, and others? Why we give financial and other support to the candidate and potential candidates from the region. And that is to explain what the strategies are from the EU side for enlargement, to explain what the priorities are from the country and from the region, and how our programs can support and facilitate the implementation of those strategies and priorities. So I will move here now.
Where is it?
It's on the desktop.
This one?
That one.
Okay.
First. It never fails. Every conference that we go to, there's usually a hitch, but that's all right. So, this is the international part of Erasmus+. Erasmus+ is the EU's main program for cooperation in education, training, and youth. A lot of the actions that we have, a lot of the support we have, you do not see, because it's primarily an internal EU program. There is a window, a part of it, that is for cooperation with countries outside. And this is what you see, but it's only the tip of the iceberg. And hopefully in the years to come, you will develop your own national agency for Erasmus+, and you will be able in Serbia to participate fully in the program, having the remainder of the iceberg below the water also at your disposal. So what is it? It's a program for cooperation in education training, and now youth and sport as well. It funds all sorts of actions and practitioners in these areas with projects and also with scholarships. And it fosters, as I said, cooperation among the EU, or as you'll see later, program countries, and between the EU or program countries and the rest of the world. We have to discern at the beginning some terminology. We speak of program countries because we have countries that pay to participate fully in our program. They're not part of the EU. So program countries are all of the EU, 28 countries, plus the 6 that you see listed below: Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, and Turkey. And all the other countries, including Serbia, we call partner countries. They can partner with the program countries for certain actions under the international part of the program. What are these international opportunities? Well, they're credit mobility. For the first time last year, and under Erasmus+, we opened up what used to be only the intra-EU mobility, the old Erasmus program. That's what we called our new program, Erasmus+. Erasmus became known throughout the world. In Australia, in the US, everybody became Erasmus. So now we have this kind of mobility for staff and students, not only within the EU, but virtually the whole world. And Serbia and the Western Balkans have a huge budget for supporting this kind of mobility. Then we have Erasmus Mundus joint master degrees. For those of you familiar with the old Erasmus Mundus was a program on its own. It had Action 1 and Action 2. It's a little different now. We'll explain it later. The continuation of Tempest program is more or less capacity building for higher education. It has a new name, but as I said, more or less, it's about the same. They're projects to help reform higher education, both in terms of programs, teaching methods, but also governance. And finally, the Jean Monnet actions stayed also more or less as what they were in the past. And this is an action that's not used enough in the Western Balkans. If there's any part of the world that needs to have Jean Monnet, it is countries that have the intention to become EU member states. And Jean Monnet is a program that helps you converge with the EU acquis. So we'll start with the credit mobility. This is, you'll see the numbers here for the rest of the world, but we don't care about that. We care about the region. The region has funding for 4,000 mobilities. Mobilities is a term we use, we made it up. It means a period of time, the payment of one individual to go from one place to another, whether they're a staff or a student in university. So we have enough scholarships for 4,000 such mobilities. In the first year of the program, as you see, we were not able to use up all this money in the Western Balkans. Hopefully, we will be able to use it next year, and we'll have some money left over that we'll have to throw on top of these 4,000. They're short-term studies for the students, and they can be the duration of 3 months or a whole year. And that can be at any level, at the bachelor level, at the master, or at the PhD level. With this one, it's not a program that will give you a degree somewhere else, though. This is a program where the students start their studies here. They go somewhere in the program countries to do part of their studies, but they come back home and they receive their degree from their home institution. And this program is two ways. Not only with Serbians leave to go out, but European or program country students and staff will come in. And actually this is happening, and this is very encouraging. For staff, we know it's difficult for academics to leave their posts. They need to teach. But the duration is very short, from 5 days to 2 months. 5 days is the length of a conference, and surely universities can spare their professors to leave for just 5 days. So professors from here can leave to go into a university in the program country for as short as 5 days or as long as 2 months, or you can bring in professors from European and other program country universities in Serbia to stay with you, to teach with you, to do research with you for the same length of duration. These are the results so far we have from this kind of credit mobility in 2015. We had to have a second call to promote this program because, as I said, we were not able to use up all the money. This is the results we have from the beginning, and in total it's about 3,600 mobilities. I'm very pleased with the results. We are very pleased with the results for two reasons. One, that the split between staff and learner, as you see here, staff is in pink, the students are in blue. The split is about 40-60, or 60-40. And the two columns, the tall column is students from the Western Balkans coming into Europe and other program countries. The shorter columns are people from Europe coming into Serbia. And this is terribly important that we have two-way mobility. What is also encouraging is this was a strategic use of the program, because going out, there were more going students. Coming in, there were more professors or staff. Joint Erasmus Mundus joint master degrees. These offer cooperation between institutions, universities, of 3 universities from at least 3 different program countries, but it can be a consortium of universities that has more universities, including universities from program countries such as Serbia. As a matter of fact, you had the #1 rated, when we did a quality review, project in Erasmus Mundus, Astromundus, with the participation of the University of Belgrade. So it can be done. We had partner countries, including yours, participate in Erasmus Mundus program. Universities as part of a consortia where all of them give more or less the same degree at the same level of difficulty and quality at the same time, so students can freely circulate among the universities in the consortia to take their degrees. The courses can last, they're masters, they can last either 12, 18, or 24 months, or respectively 60, 90, or 120 ECTS. The proposals for all of Erasmus Plus, you will see, have the same evaluation criteria. Relevance, how relevant is this to the development needs, the strategic goals of the universities or the country. The quality of the design of the program, will it fall apart? Is it likely to survive? The quality of the team, are the right people doing the job and the work that they're most best trained to do? And the impact and dissemination. And this is very, very important. I'll come back to it later. How it works is that you put together a proposal, you meaning a group of universities. You submit it to us and say, we want to put a proposal on wastewater treatment. 3 universities from the EU program countries will participate, and maybe 1 here from Serbia. It's important because it's a big issue throughout the world, especially in the developing world, etc. This is, we've put together the best heads from these best universities. They're top the authorities, and because we are so good, we're able to attract students, etc. Okay? We evaluate the proposals among many applications of similar kinds of joint master degrees. We select the best. We give the consortia the money, and they then select the best students to come and study in their group of universities with a full scholarship to take that course. Okay. So we select the university group, the consortia, they then select the students. We provide them with enough money for all of the scholarships for the students cost of stay there, for the students' travel back and forth, their insurances, etc. And we pay a very small part of it goes to the administration of the program for the consortia and the universities involved as well. For these, along with the other ones, you apply directly to Brussels, and it's a worldwide competition, though. It's not only partner countries outside of Europe, here in the region or elsewhere, but the whole world. The US, Japan, Australia, whoever wants to participate with EU and program countries to put together jointly a master degrees offering such scholarships with EU funding. For the students also, it's worldwide competition. When the consortia have 20 or 40 scholarships to offer, they make it known to anyone in the world, and whoever wants to can come and join them, and they are selected based on their academic quality and performance. Students have an obligation. They must study in at least 2 of the consortia universities. Therefore, it is quite good for internationalization as well, because students see different parts of the world, different countries, and also how things are done in different universities. All of my slides will have a link to where you find more information, but your national agencies and your Erasmus Plus offices will be able to give you more information and also information days in your home capitals. These are the results we had of last year's call that just finished in the summer. We had 76 applications in total worldwide. 15 of them were selected for funding. The odds are not bad. Compared to research, they're pretty good, I think. And the distribution of whom we funded is more or less in accordance with those proposals. The lion's share goes to the hard sciences, then followed by the humanities, and then the life sciences. There's a link on the website where students can find out exactly which programs are ongoing, because programs selected previous years, they still continue. We provide funding for 3 intakes of students. Usually the first year people get together to organize the joint master. The second year they start bringing in students, because it takes a while to get them to come, and visa issues, etc. And then if it's a 2-year master, we have 3 years of intake, and the last year is the second year of the last intake. So this is good news. Capacity building, more or less the ex-Tempest program, as I mentioned earlier. It's a program that you know very well here in Serbia, because you have the largest number of projects under Tempest and capacity building, again, in this last selection round. You also are unique that of all the participating partner countries, you are the country that has the highest number of projects managed by your institutions. That is, that the consortia is managed by a Serbian university, which is not that high in numbers, not for even Russia or Egypt or other countries to which we offer these programs that are much larger in population and scope than Serbia. The objectives remain the same as they were for Tempus. It's to build capacity and to help modernize the universities and higher education institutions, and to ensure that there is structural and long-lasting impact. This is the difference. We've had Tempus for almost 25 years. We're doing the same thing. It's wonderful. At the beginning, everybody participates. Whatever remains, remains. We will build on that the next round, etc. But after 25 years, we will not continue to do that. Now we ask you for upfront, how will you maintain the project? Something that is difficult, but you've had almost 25 years of just having a project with very little maintenance or impact, if I may say so. So to support, to modernize the universities and to bring them an international element, to improve quality. You belong in the Bologna group, as do the Nordic-Baltic countries that are here. However, the quality assurance systems that are there, that are in place, that are in paper, that are processes, are not always as strong implemented on the ground as they are described on paper. So we need to improve still the quality and the quality assurance of the universities, of the offer they give to the students, improve what the students take out from their education. That is what they know, not what the professors know. Their skills and their competence after they finish their studies and their degrees. Enhance the management of the institutions and the governance of universities. I won't go into very much. You know the situation in the region and in Serbia, and I think there's still a lot is left to be desired in terms of how effective and how efficient the governance and the management of the institutions are. To promote people-to-people contacts, yes, and there is even more mobility opportunities for the Western Balkans within these projects. We have the detached international mobilities, which I explained first, but if you put forward a capacity building project, you can already at the outset envisage that in order to have more impact, to train students or staff better, you foresee to have an exchange of staff and students within this project. This gives you almost 80, or is it 85% of the budget, more than the limit, and you can, in this way, exchange more staff and students back and forth. Ultimately, it's to converge your voluntary convergence with the EU acquis, with Bologna. It's not us, your government, your ministry says this is what they want to do, this is the direction of the country, and as Bologna members, this is what you all have signed and said you will be doing. So, as with Tempus, there are two kinds of projects, the joint projects and the structural measures. Joint projects are those where we look for an impact or an effect being felt at the institution level of those participating institutions. If it's a structural project, that means that the Ministry of Education of the partner countries has to be involved, because the outcome of the project will be such that it will have an effect at the higher education system level, nationwide, not only at the university level. And those, we have fewer projects, and those are more difficult projects, but ultimately the aim is to improve or to reform higher education systems. The project's length are 2 or 3 years. They're partnerships from both program countries, EU+, and the partner countries, as in Tempus. And as I mentioned earlier, either institutions from the program countries, the EU side, or the partner country, Serbia, they can be the lead, the coordinator of the project, and you have many of these here. We have split up the world into regions, often debated whether or not we should split them up into such regions, but for financial reasons, we have. And the Western Balkans is one region that has a group of funding, because you receive funding from the Instrument for Pre-Accession Assistance. And there, we have added this additional mobility of staff and students within your project. And the rules for the mobility, how much they get, duration, they're the same as the international mobility that I explained earlier, and that your contact points here and elsewhere will explain to you in greater detail. This is a centralized project. How do you apply? You apply to Brussels. The next deadline is the 2nd of February. We have a group of experts which we renew every year. We don't have the same ones year after year. About a third of them change every year. They're experts from the EU, but also partner countries, and we assess them the same things: the relevance of the project, the quality of the design, the quality of the team involved, and the impact and dissemination after the project is finished. There is the website for more information, and this one, unlike the previous ones, you can have the coordinator to be also from program countries. These are the results from the last such call. This is what we selected. 65 were the applications from the Western Balkans. 15 were the total projects that we were funded. The lion's share, again, was in Serbia. And if you see, the number of projects equates more or less to the budget, because the budgets are the size of about €1 million each. So for a relatively small region compared to the southern Mediterranean countries or Asia or Latin America, you have a very large, very generous funding. Now, Jean Monnet. Jean Monnet is one of the, like Erasmus Mundus, is open to the whole world. And we have Jean Monnet modules and centers of excellence from the United States to Georgia. And everybody participates, can participate, and they do. However, if there's a region that needs it, it is here. Because Jean Monnet has the purpose of converging the country with the EU acquis, and its fundamental core is European integration studies. Therefore, it provides funding for other modules, chairs, or centers of excellence. It's not very complicated, and it's not very high, the funding you get, but you can start small and work up. It's for teaching and research within those modules on EU integration studies, or policy debates with the academic worlds, academics of EU studies, economy, and law, a network of supporting networks via projects, and supporting to institutions and associations that want to put on activities related always to EU integration and EU studies. We have annual calls. This call is now open. On the 20th of October last month, we had this year's call. Jean Monnet was inside the package of activities that are available with applications to be submitted next year. There has to be one applicant institution, but there'll be other informal involvement of other countries as well, or it can be just this one applicant. Proposals have the same criteria for evaluation, as we mentioned before: relevance, quality of team and design, and impact and dissemination. That is the website that we have where you can find more information. And if you have specific questions, please, I'd like to spend time to explain to what your questions are, because I'm sure many of you know these actions. If not, I will go into more detail. The one thing I did forget to mention is that all of the actions I presented you apply to in Brussels, except for the first one, the credit mobility. The international credit mobility, it is managed by the national agencies that manage the Erasmus Plus program in the member states and the other program countries. And we're very happy that today we have several national agencies representatives here with us today. Can I ask everybody to please stand up so we can see where you are, and maybe tell us what country you're from? Okay. Why don't you come to the microphone? I think we have plenty of time. Come on. Oh, we have a mic right here. Okay. Here you go.
Good morning, everyone. I am Greta Kiškienė from the Lithuania National Agency.
Good morning. Antra Mendele from Latvian National Agency.
Good morning. Sini Piippo from the Finnish National Agency, SIMO.
Good morning. I'm Sigrid Vala from the Icelandic National Agency. Good morning, I'm Cecil Holmberg from the Norwegian Center for International Cooperation in Education, Norway.
I'm Hélène Pinault from French National Agency, so it's not Baltic country, but I was invited, so thank you for this.
You see how popular the seminar is.
Hello, I'm Annela Hendriksson from the Estonian National Agency.
And another lady from the Lithuanian National Agency, Donata Pečiukienė, project coordinator.
I said everyone. And you know Marija and her team here from the Erasmus Plus office. So, in this international mobility, there is an application, and you need an interinstitutional agreement between two universities. One of them here in I forget where I am. One here in Serbia, and one in the country, let's say Norway, for example, the University of Turku, or whichever university is here. That there's a cooperation between the two universities. The rectors of each university sign, they say yes, they agree to cooperate. And then both sides put together a plan, how many students will be going out to the EU, how many will be coming in, the same thing with professors. And there's a little application, why, what do you plan to do, etc. This application is then submitted to the program country national agency, the EU Plus group, because they have the money. As I mentioned before, we give most of the money to our national agencies and they manage our programs. We manage only the international part. And this bilateral cooperation is managed by our national agencies. That's why it's important that they are here today. So you get to see your counterparts, other professors, for capacity building, Erasmus Mundus, Jean Monnet, yes. But these ladies are the important ones for the international credit mobility, because their institutions will apply to them for funding of exchanges of students and staff internationally. And with that, I'd like to stop, take a pause, and ask you to give me your questions.
Hello. University of Novi Sad, Ivana Vujko from the International Relations Office. It was a pleasure to be invited and a pleasure to listen to your presentations. I have a very concrete question. What is the relationship between Erasmus Mundus and Erasmus Plus in terms of, for instance, students spending 10 months in Erasmus Mundus on the master's level and then wanting to apply on PhD exchange for 6 months, because we already had these kinds of questions from students who were already mobile. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Leila Pojskić from University of Sarajevo. Would you be so kind to explain what do you judge as relevant? What are the bases for relevance?
Well, while others are thinking, and please do think for more questions, I'll answer those first two. First one is the Erasmus Mundus scholarship is a scholarship for a full degree. In Erasmus Mundus Action 2 in the past, yes, but that is no longer available at all. I'm sorry, for the old projects. Okay, so if you have, so you're talking about old projects, they're still continuing their intakes later. Those are unique questions. I would say that they are more or less than the same thing, because the Erasmus Mundus Action 2 was a credit mobility. It wasn't a scholarship for a degree. Therefore, we have replaced that now with the international credit mobility. So if they are applying and getting a mobility under Action 2 of Erasmus, a past Erasmus Mundus, if it's on the level of masters, of course, they can apply under Erasmus Plus credit mobility at the level of PhD, but not for masters still. So the same applies as it was Erasmus Mundus? For the Action 2, for people that don't know it, if they don't confuse, this is it's an old program that no longer continues. So yes, Action 2 of Erasmus Mundus is more or less absorbed into what we call international credit mobility, where in the past Action 2 was only at, I think, it was at all levels. So the difference is now is he cannot or she cannot reapply for the same level, but she can at the following level, just like you can in international degree mobility. If a student is intelligent, they will put into their studies some mobility in bachelor, some in master, and some in PhD level. It's there, it's available. What do we mean by relevance? Okay, for the capacity building projects, which are the easiest, and because they're part of the inside the call, the old ex-Tempest projects, we have national priorities listed in the call for proposals, where each country has decided, they said, for us, this is important, and this and this and that. And in my next presentation, I'll show you what are national priorities in Serbia and what are the regional priorities for the Western Balkans. So that is easy. If you have for Erasmus Mundus or for Jean Monnet, I think it's very easy. The relevance is these countries have a perspective to become EU member states. Therefore, this is a program for EU integration. It's relevant for them. For Erasmus Mundus, again, the relevance of the program depends on the consortia. If you offer sound mixing, I actually had this in the past, and it's the one I always use. If you have a wonderful master degree coordinated by, I don't know which university, on sound mixing, the latest digital mixing for recording music and videos, etc. And in that consortia, you also put, as the time was, I think, Armenia. It's not terribly relevant for Armenia to have this kind of a master when they have such bigger needs in irrigation, in wastewater treatment, etc. So the relevance is for the institutions, but if it concerns a partner country, also for the partner country involved. If the institutions that are putting together a program, they are not, let's say, not the best, but they're not known to be leaders in nanotechnology. So is it relevant that that university be leading a master degrees in nanotechnology if they're not already at the cutting edge? Okay?
Hello, I am Outi Savanlahti from the University of Eastern Finland. I would like to ask about the name Erasmus Mundus. We used to have Erasmus Mundus master's degree programs, and then the new name Erasmus Plus master's degree came there. Has the name Erasmus Mundus master's degree been readopted? Or are they living side by side with Erasmus Plus master's degree programs?
Okay. One more, maybe? Here.
Agnes Chaudhry from the University for Education in Subotica. My question is, are the language requirements for incoming students set by university, by country, or are there any general requirements? I would like to know whether I should prepare my students for language exams, to be very precise. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we won't push you if everything is so clear you want to look it up yourself. Erasmus Mundus master courses and now Erasmus Mundus joint degrees. Well, when we moved from the old programs, a set of Erasmus Mundus, Tempus, Alpha, EduLink, and all the rest, to one super duper giant program, Erasmus Plus, the name Erasmus was selected. At the beginning was Erasmus for All, and then became Erasmus Plus because it is our brand name inside and outside of the EU. And we thought that the master degrees would also be part of the Erasmus Plus, we called at the time degree mobility. But there was a big push from the people who had participated in the Erasmus Mundus master courses to keep the name, because that too was a label. We had Erasmus was world known, but the Erasmus Mundus was an excellence degree, and it had a certain prestige and a label to it as well. So guess what? In Europe, we compromised, as we always do, and now we have the Erasmus Mundus joint, Erasmus Mundus joint master's degrees. So it's much longer, but it's a compromise. Erasmus Mundus is still in there. And this is an action under the bigger program Erasmus Plus, just to confuse you. Now, language requirements. We have online testing, if I'm not mistaken, for language requirements because before students move. You are here in Serbia? Yes. So you're asking for students going out. Exactly. Maybe Marija can fill this in.
Well, what I would actually like to do is to ask one of our university representatives for the International Relations Office to explain the procedure, how they select students in terms of the languages, because we know that the big universities have already started to launch the calls for students, so maybe they could say, perhaps Ivana, if you like, or... Okay.
I work together with my colleague from the Faculty of Teachers Training in Hungarian, so we work together. We have launched maybe around 20 calls by now, because we have decided that even maybe if we don't have all the circumstances perfect in terms of, all the administrative and technical support that we might need, that we should try. We are now selecting outgoing candidates, and what we do is we put the language requirement that is defined in the interinstitutional agreement. So if it is B2 level of English, then the candidate should give some proof of that. If it is Hungarian, if they are going to Hungary and they are going to participate in a Hungarian study program, then it's Hungarian. So it really depends. But in terms of incoming candidates, we rely on our partners. So our partners are the ones that should then use the Serbian language requirements, whether we have a Serbian study program or English study program, and do the same. So basically, we work in this fashion.
I would also just like to add that the higher education universities in Serbia, mostly the bigger universities, they all have ECTS coordinators. Many of the colleges have them. So of course, the procedures maybe are not perfect, but still they exist and they are established. So in case there are any dilemmas, we're ready to provide answers.
Thank you for clarifying the name issue. Now that you said that the new name is Erasmus Mundus Joint Master's Degrees, I would like to know if you require us actually to have the joint master's degree where the diploma is signed by the rectors of all or both participating universities, meaning just one paper as a diploma after the program, or whether you also accept double degree programs to be part of this concept. Thank you.
I think it was on my slide, I did not say it. No, we accept double and multiple degrees as well as joint. Joint, as in the past, is preferable, it's desirable, but not necessary. We know that there are often difficulties, administrative hurdles that cannot be overcome. However, I must signal that in Serbia, with the Erasmus Mundus, they managed to give joint degrees with universities in Austria, universities in Italy, I believe, etc. So it is possible, but sometimes it is very, very long and difficult procedure. So both double degrees or multiple, if they go to several, are acceptable as well. And now, because I'm going to go to my second part, but introduce the lovely ladies from the national agencies, I'd like to have an idea of how many of you come from program countries, and of course I imagine most of you come from here in Serbia. Also give you a chance to get up. So how many people could you get up, please, if you're guests here, if you're coming from program countries, the EU, Nordic-Baltic countries?
And France.
And France. Come on up, come on up. There we go. Okay, so you know who to target when you go out in the networking session afterwards, huh? And those of you who are not international officers, but are staff or faculty at Serbian institutions, can you please get up?
And there are two colleagues.
And you're, I'm sorry? And we have, all right, and people from the region, Bosnia-Herzegovina is here, I believe, and other colleagues from the Western Balkans, Albania and Montenegro and Kosovo. We're missing some people. Here we go, all right. Okay, I don't have time for all the names, but now you have an idea of who is who and they come from where. With this said, I will move on to the second, I know, wrong one. Yeah, that's it. Open. All right. So this presentation hopefully answers some of the very important questions. Relevance. What do we mean by project is relevant, and why we're putting forward this program and other cooperation and support to the region. This region is the most important region strategically for the EU because you are the closest neighbor geographically, and you're also the closest neighbor politically and with the perspective of joining us and becoming member states. So for that reason, as you saw, we are very generous in terms of the cooperation we give you, opportunities and funding for Erasmus Plus program. You can cooperate fully into our research program, Horizon 2020, the Creative Europe program for culture, and you have a great deal of support. My colleague from Delegation knows, I think in Serbia, millions of euros every year on projects on education and inclusion. Here I will explain to you a little bit in a short period of time what our strategies are from the EU side, and then try to have the general common objectives at the regional level and then go down to the national level. So starting a few years ago, as part of the Copenhagen criteria for enlargement, our DG for external cooperation and enlargement said that above everything else that have to be done for candidate countries and potential candidates are these three things. Fundamentals first, observance of the rule of law, reform of the public administration sector, economic governance, and competitiveness. Make the countries competitive before they enter, because it will be difficult for their survival afterwards. So rule of law, what do we mean? We mean that the judiciary system has to be functioning, effective, independent, and without political influence. We have to ensure the freedom of speech, accountability and efficiency of every level involved in the judiciary, and to improve its workings. Public administration reform, good governance. It's a big word, it's a buzzword, everybody uses it, but what do we mean? We mean that people act in a certain level of professionalism that we expect anywhere in the world, someone who is seriously a professional, and whether they're in the private or the public sector. Everybody goes and does their job and does it well. The public sector is there for the service of the public, is there to help the public, not to make them go through 1,000 hoops with their bureaucracy. Nor are they there to have a job for life and not be able to contribute fully to their fellow ones. So management, very important, but so is transparency of the procedures in the public administration. I see people smiling here, and I assume you're from the region, okay. So I'm not telling you something you don't know. Meritocracy. We have so many disillusioned young people, in Serbia, in neighboring countries, and even in Europe, because they don't have the same prospects for a good life as their parents did. We have 50% youth unemployment in some northern EU countries like Greece, Spain, etc. Serbia has had these figures for years, for 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. The region as a whole is getting very high up in youth unemployment. It's disillusionment at a massive scale, where on top of these prospects, you also have lack of transparency and lack of meritocracy. Things will not change if we don't have these two things: meritocracy and transparency. And it's especially important for the young people. Otherwise, they will leave. And they are leaving in droves. It is one thing to have a harder life and harder career inside your country. It's another thing where you have no prospect of having that, because not only are there few jobs, they're already taken by people who know how to get them. Professionalism, yes. When we ask students leaving, even graduates of universities, we are conducting a study at the moment, and I'll tell you about it later. What skills did the university not give them? When we ask employers, what skills did their young graduates not have, not bring to the job? It's analytical skills, initiatives, the soft skills, be able to do things on their own. Be able to read something and make a short report. Not being able to organize things. First I do this. If I don't know something, I know how to find it, where to go and get it. These are professional skills that are required in almost any profession. So this is what we mean by the public administration, and they have to be the best example. The public service has displayed these things first as an example to the rest of society. Economic governance, yes, and guess what? Education is the basis for economic governance. In the EU, we have a standing group of experts for the economic case of education. I'm sure you've heard of it before. Education is the basis for everything: the personal development, social, cultural, political development, but also economic development and growth. So if you want to develop economically, if you want to grow economically, you have to upskill the level of your citizens, of your population at large. Not only those that go to university, but everybody. You have to have reform, economic reform, and job creation. And who will create jobs? Investment from the outside is very good, but it has to be had when there's something attractive to bring them here. Things that can attract outside investment are good, transparent system, a sound environment for investment and doing business, and skilled people. Investment in the climate of economic environment, and of course, good management. So these are the three fundamentals that all of the candidate countries and potential candidates are told to work on from the EU side. There are all sorts of laws and directives that you have to comply with and converge with. But above everything else, these are the ones, and these are going from year to year because they're not easy. And we know they're not easy, and they will take a long time. We have in the EU a Europe 2020 strategy. We disclosed in 2010, I believe, and it's where Europe we wanted to be by the year 2020. Based on this strategy, the Western Balkans developed their own Southeastern Europe strategy for 2020, headed by the Regional Cooperation Council. We, in our strategy, say we need smart, sustainable, and inclusive growth. RCC came up that you need two more pillars: integrated growth and governance for growth. Integrated growth meaning that people have to, different ministries, different public sectors have to speak to each other so that things fit. It's rare that one service on their own can bring about growth or reform. So you have to have an integrated approach to how you go about for growth. Governance for growth deals with what I mentioned earlier, the transparency, the meritocracy, the anti-corruption issues. But the three pillars of smart, sustainable, and inclusive growth are more or less what we have in the EU, and I will go to these in more detail. So based on your governments, the whole region now, not only Serbia, your government's decision at the highest level of the summits for the Southeastern Europe 2020 strategy, these are the sectors priority. We said relevance. These are the priority sectors for the strategy of how to have smart growth and investment for smart growth. First one is education and competences. No surprise. So there have to be taught at every level, starting from primary, secondary, and also university, basic and transversal skills. What we call the 8 key competences, a communication that in the EU was published in 2006. For most of your, at least basic school education, it is unfamiliar. The teachers are not prepared, and therefore the students cannot obtain this. Linking the education with the labor market, relevance of education, in higher education, in vocational education as well, and modernizing and rationalizing that. In the region, with the exception of possibly Albania, but in Serbia certainly, you have a great deal of vocational education. Students, though, that do not go to a vocation after they finish these. They go to university. And you have a lot of schools that are a misnomer. Vocational school for economy, vocational school for medicine, vocational school for law. Those are not the typical vocational schools. And I say this for my colleagues coming from the EU who don't realize that we don't have similar kind of vet schools. Those are academic disciplines. They're not vet only. Developing the capacity for research. That research and innovation. One element and one area that can bring growth is research, high tech, and innovation. And that can be ingrown. It needs investment, but it also depends on the capacity of the people to actually conduct research that will bring off spin-off activities, projects, companies that will produce a product that can go to the market. So that was the second one for the smart growth. Third one is digital society. Yes, digitalization. You know about it, our children know better than we do. We live in a digital era, and people have to be digitally friendly and prepared for the digital society. And finally, culture and creative sectors. Not being, we're proud because this is our culture, here we are, and if we were born somewhere else, we'd say we're proud because that was our culture, that's where we were. No. Culture in the creative sector as an engine, as another means of contributing to the economy. Everybody is proud of their culture, and so they should be. But there's a creative sector to continue, not only to look in the past, but what we do now. There are many creative people out there producing either products, everything from the films to handicrafts, that they contribute to the economy now. And for our cultural heritage, often rather than being inside weeds and crumbling down, we can help it. We can prepare it to be a tourist attraction, to also contribute to the economy, and to be an educational facility as well. So those are the sectors that your countries with RCC identified as the most important ones for smart growth. These are the sectors that they identified as the most important one for sustainable growth. Energy, to be energy efficient, to use effectively your resources, to find new renewable resources, and the infrastructure that is needed to go with them. Transport. A lot of the IPA, Instrument for Pre-Accession Assistance that we give from Brussels, and those are billions of euros, goes into infrastructures, roads, railroads, bridges, etc. I would like a portion of that to go to education, but a lot of that goes there. But it's not sustainable if you get people to give you money to build bridges, and you contract then EU people to come and build you the bridges. You have to develop a system where you have the engineers, you have the company, and you build your own. But in the meantime, you do need to be connected through transport systems that are efficient and effective, and to improve what is not only road transport, but railway and water transport as well. And environment. Environment, big issues with pollution. With development comes pollution. We witnessed this a few decades ago, you're seeing it now. It is important to take care of the pollution issue early rather than late, because there are health issues involved and there's loss of unrecoverable natural resources if you don't take care at the beginning. Irrigation is part of that. The effects of climate change and how you can minimize them. Forestation of deforested area. Water resource management. It is sad to see waste not treated being thrown into the water systems. The waters you drink, the beaches that you go to swim in. And generally, awareness raising of all the population, starting with children, small children, about environmental issues and preserving the natural resources. Under inclusive growth, we have employment and health. That is for everyone. Everyone has a right to have a health system, and everyone has a right, hopefully, and I don't mean right as in the legal sense, but everybody aspires. It's a good benefit for any government or system to be able to give to the citizens, and I would add education there. You cannot have a life for yourself. Our young people, our children, our grandchildren, they need to have a job unless they're independently wealthy. And until now, for many generations, they were able to have good prospects in their country and say they will have a job, they will have a family, they will marry, they have children, and as corny as it sounds, the pursuit of happiness. Along with that is good health care. That is important. It isn't only the rich that will be able to be treated if they have cancer, to have the operations, to get their teeth when they fall out. It should be for everyone. So we need to promote employment creation. One of the ways we can do it is from the other sustainable growth pillar and through education, I would argue, to enhance the labor market, encourage investments, stimulate the social initiatives here, but also improve the health sector, both in terms of capacity of its staff and of the services that it is providing. Now, coming closer to education, with the region, we also have a very high-level policy dialogue only on education and training issues. We have a ministerial meeting starting from 2012 of all the ministers responsible for education in the region with the European Commission, and we meet with them to say, what is important for you? What are your priorities? What do you need assistance with? How can we help you? What can we do to supplement your reform efforts? We have in between stakeholder consultations because we always get the official view, then we have to see the view on the ground, what is actually happening. And we also have evidence gathering. We preach evidence-based policymaking, and we also have to practice it. So at the moment, we have a study that is running in the Western Balkans comparing how many and what type of higher education degrees are given in the region by country and by institution on the one hand, and on the other hand, where are the jobs, where have they been in the last 3 years, and where they're likely to be openings for young graduates in the next 3 years in the region, and also by country. In 2013, we finished a mapping study of how teachers were prepared for their teaching profession, and that's why we know that training of teachers is a priority, because the way that they are trained is not in line with the latest developments. So, and there we try to link the reform efforts in the countries with the convergence to the EU and to provide support for them. And from our first few meetings, guess what? Higher education was the #1 priority. The relevance and the quality of higher education, the minister told us, has to improve. Teacher training, the methods and the competence that teachers have, and there in our report it is cited that the teachers training the teachers are themselves need to improve their game. We have to retrain who are the people that are training teachers so we can have a better batch of teachers, so we can have different and better outputs from our schools, whether primary or secondary. And finally, our ministerial meeting in Vlora, Albania, we had that research and innovation is important, and especially linked with a third level of higher education, the PhD level. There has to be in graduate studies more research, more practical research, not in theory. it is not usual for the EU and developed countries to have the bulk of a PhD program done inside the classroom. The bulk of a PhD is in the laboratory or in the library doing research. This is not the case in Serbia or any of the other Western Balkan countries yet. But that is where hopefully you are aiming to go. Starting last year, again from a more global view of our enlargement colleagues, we asked each government, part of what we call the buzzwords ownership, we asked your governments to tell us what are your priorities for the next year for economic reforms, and this is economic reform programs, something that will be repeated again every year. These are individual priorities set by your governments for each country, and then they're reviewed by the Commission and the ECOFIN Council. So for Serbia, the priorities that your government said are important for this year is to improve the business environment, tackle the gray economy, transparency, meritocracy, business inspections, simplify the regulatory environment, and education. Upgrade skills that people have, finalize the national qualification frameworks, reform the education system, improving outcomes, and enhancing human capital. You are lucky in Serbia, you have a very good national strategy for education and an action plan that was developed and adopted this year. It was difficult to come to a consensus on this, I understand, but the greatest difficulty is still ahead, the implementation of that action plan and that strategy. Serbia, like other countries, go from one strategy to another without actually implementing them. We are not in the chasing of the perfect strategy. There is no such thing. I'll be very happy to implement this strategy before it terminates. And if it does end without being implemented fully, just extend the period. There is no reason to chase strategies. They're only papers inside somebody's drawers unless they're actually implemented. So you have the tools, now the hard part is to implement them. I did something, okay. And then for the other priority is generate more income through SMEs. We'll go here. Yeah. Actually, is it a touch? I don't think it's a touch. No, it's not.
Or we can just do this.
Okay, we'll go.
You can.
I can go down. That's okay. Here we are. Stimulate private investment. I think I spoke about that before. Stimulate increased research activities and improve energy production, gas. Those, if you're looking for relevance in sectors, you have some of them for Serbia here as well. Oops, we skip. Tomorrow I go to Kosovo on the next day. Now, why are we bringing all these other strategies outside of education? Strategies for economic growth, strategies that are for the development of the country at large inside this forum, which is primarily on a program for education and training in an audience that is in higher education. The reason I'm bringing these all together is for the relevance. Things have to fit. Education cannot do its thing on its own, the economy a different thing, employment and so on. We all have to work together. There aren't enough resources available, human or financial, from your side or from our side to do things individually and have one little pinpoint here, one there. It is not manageable, it's not sustainable. So we're trying to group everything together, to target things that are the main priorities, to focus all of our efforts, all of our assistance on these things which you have said are priorities, thus increasing the number of projects and support we have in these areas and hopefully creating more impact in these areas after a few years. And education, if we want to develop research or transport or energy or whatever, is the basis of developing capacity in any sector later. We spent 2 years convincing our colleagues in Brussels that it's not only bridges the people, the Western Balkans need, they need to reform education, they need to have the capacity themselves to do all these things later. It's a famous Chinese proverb, don't give people fish, teach them how to fish. So Education is a capacity. The other one is that education, not only higher, but all levels need basic and transversal skills. You've seen your PISA results, and you are the best from the Western Balkan region. In higher education, you're probably the best in the Western Balkan region. However, this is below the OECD average. This is below the EU average. If you're going to be part of a bigger club, of a bigger community, you have to compete with them, not with your neighbors, not with Kazakhstan and sub-Saharan countries. So that is why you have to become better. Transversal skills are very important. That's why teachers are important. Basics, math, comprehension, and sciences are the basic skills. But other things, learning to learn, analytical skills, critical thinking, parallel thinking, interpersonal skills, communication in foreign languages, IT competences, those are equally important, and especially in an evolving and flexible labor market, one that is not predictable easily here or elsewhere, because those are the skills you need no matter what your job is, no matter where you are, whether you are a manual worker or whether you're a university professor. We are all political and social animals. We have to deal with other people. And the most important thing we can develop is our ability to solve problems. And that's where the education system has to give to its students and to people leaving it. I think as higher education, you are the top of the food chain. You are the top of the pyramid because you provide the highest qualifications, the highest skills of your society. You train the teachers, the managers, the engineers, and all the other professionals that will take care of other sectors of the economies. So therefore, what people in Serbia can do, to a great degree, I'm sorry, is your responsibility. Yours, people before you, people after you. It's the higher education system. You give them the qualifications, the degrees. What they do and what they do not do out there starts with you. Then I spoke about the relevance for projects in capacity building on higher education, the ex tempus actions. Here we have more or less the same objectives, and they're clearly listed inside the call for proposal. For projects for higher education capacity building, you have to modernize the curriculum with key competences, with transversal skills, with curricula in different teaching methods, and that is modern and up to date. You have to modernize the governments, the effective management of institutions in higher education, and the functioning of the system, cooperation. In the same universities, when I come to information days, it is interesting, we share the best projects, the good projects with everybody else. And I'm always so pleasantly surprised and very happy to learn about projects. What I didn't realize is that the person from the faculty next to the one that has a project didn't know anything about that project. We have to work together. We have to disseminate more, and we have to make things known. That is the only way we can build up on the results of these projects, to be able to work together. And the people in the decision-making process are the ones that have to force this. If cooperation is not happening voluntarily, then the management will have to make this cooperation and communication effective and available for all. We cannot keep on going to every faculty of law and having a project on EU integration. It's impossible, and it will take us 100 years, even if it were possible. What we can do, if one faculty has it, the others have to also, in the university, the other faculties in Serbia also have to adopt it and learn from it. Quality assurance, I spoke about this. Not only in paper form, but actually what happens. And if you do have an evaluation, not only from the same group, not only from your peers, you have to bring external experts. I was surprised that Montenegro, in part of their evaluations of universities and institutions, had external experts outside the country, and Serbia did not. I understand now Serbia has it in their plans. Good. But that is, and then when they give you the report, it's not the process that's important. The process finished, they have a report. The follow-up and the implementation of the recommendations is the most important part. And that is what we'll be looking at for. Not your reform plans, but the implementation of your reform plans and monitoring of your steps in reforming. Developing higher education in the wider sector, lifelong learning, higher education vet. You have many colleges in Serbia. There are not universities that give professional qualification, and that is a feather in your hat. That is very important for everybody to be able to have an opportunity to higher education. Now you will have masters in higher education colleges as well. That is wonderful. It is important that we have this for people to come back into higher education when they want to, either to obtain a degree or for their personal development fulfillment. University business cooperation. I visited Novi Sad. I don't know if you are still, but at the time, it was the best and the closest cooperation between university and businesses. Others should learn from them if they haven't already done so, because I'm not up to date completely. Regional cooperation, yes. For a region that had the similar background, similar system, not so long ago, nobody wants to know what their neighbor is doing. Nobody's sharing what their neighbor is doing. And I think that is sad. There has to be more regional cooperation because for us, on the other hand, we cannot come and do everything to everyone. When we have our ministers coming together, it was interesting last time that we only had good examples from the region, not from the EU. There are good things that are happening in the region, not everywhere, not everything, but there are, and you can learn from each other because you have similar background and you understand each other. It is more difficult for people from Europe that have a different tradition, different mentality and culture to understand the functioning here than it is for your neighbors. And that is something that we hope we see a lot more regional cooperation. And the reform implementation and monitoring of the reforms, as I mentioned earlier. This is what we've taken a small part of that very large Excel table on priorities for capacity building. These are the ones for Serbia, which areas you've selected. We asked to reduce them because if you have everything available, then you do get sound mixing, then you do get all sorts of things. But what we want is to target it more, to have more projects in the same field for greater impact. So this is what it looks like in a nutshell. The call itself and the larger table you will find on our website. You develop priorities and we develop priorities. So the national priorities for Serbia on the left-hand side and the regional priorities that we've developed at the EU are on the right-hand side. And we converge on two things, teacher training and environmental protection. And as you saw earlier, in almost every forum that we had, whether it was the ministers of education or the governments or the strategies for development in each country, teacher training and environmental protection was present in almost all of them. Here, improving the quality of education, learning outcomes. What students can do, what skills they possess after they leave the education system, that is the #1 priority. And there we are perfectly in sync between the national priorities and the regional priorities for capacity building. Improving management, slight difference. But again, all of these things are very important. They're all very relevant. University service support to students. I was surprised that after many projects on student services, they were not sustained. We conducted, I think, a short study among the old Tempus projects, and you had projects on developing student services. In practice, though, very little is still on the ground that is of good quality. So we have to look at sustainability and impact in our projects. Quality assurance processes and mechanisms that will stay, that are true, that are rigorous, and that are followed to the end, including implementation, not only the perfunctory reports. Development research, that we have seen before. For us, it's important that every institution has a strategic plan. The country is developing its own, but the institution needs to know where it's going. To strengthen the areas that it needs strengthening, to improve the areas that are good, to make them excellent, and to offer even better services. Internationalization and cooperation with the region, with the EU, is very important, and access to the population, the segment of the population that don't usually have opportunities to go to university because they're disadvantaged for one reason or another. These developing higher education, non-university sector, and monitoring the reforms, yes. That for us is now, this is my job. Before it was to learn. Now we've learned, now we have to monitor. You have an action plan, you have strategies. How are you implementing them? We're not interested in new laws or new strategies. They're only paper until they're acted. Now we're interested in implementation of these. So, by reforming the higher education system, the education system in all, we can facilitate growth and also development of the economy of the country and even job creation. Because education builds the competences and the capacities of the citizens. And they are the ones, not Martians, that will develop the economic sector, that will train the next group of people, that will be the professionals at the public administration or in the very specialized skill sectors. We need, through that also, to better prepare the young people with more skills, more relevant skills, so they can find a job. Hopefully within Serbia, within your region, but if not, somewhere, because they have to take a look, they have to take care of their own future. Ultimately, for the EU, it's convergence with the acquis and preparing you for EU membership. But on that road, I think Serbia and the region can also benefit for its own development. What can you do? Well, you can reread these slides, you can read documents by Googling and finding them on the internet to find out what are the strategies that are out there for the development of the country, of the region as a whole. Help in your part, in your role, the reform process of the higher education or the education system. But it's also important, whatever you can, for the to reform education, to reform to public administration and the economy is not only for the EU, it's also for your economic survival. And by having relevance, having sustainable projects, and assuring impact of these projects, you help yourselves and you help us in the investment we make in you through our program, through our assistance to count, to have more impact. At the beginning of all your projects, you will be asked to show how you will demonstrate sustainability and impact of your project. Be careful with that. That is very important. That is a very heavy measurement. Build on past results. Find out what projects were in the past. Have they lingered around? Anything remaining of them? Why they succeeded? Why they failed? So when you bring us and tell us a new project, you take into account and say, we will do better because they only went up to here, we will go further. And support the reform efforts the best way you can. That is what we're looking for in your projects. How will you support the reform of the higher education system and education at large if you can? Strategic use. I'm very happy with the results of the credit mobility because we had a good mix of staff and student mobility, and we had a good mix of people going to Europe and people coming in. Use this in the same way again. Find out where you want to send professionals more in. Send those people out for a master if they can, but if not, for part of their studies in the university. Mobility of staff according to your university's priorities. You come from different universities keep on saying Belgium, sorry, in Serbia. What is the strategic plan of your university? Which faculty do you want to strengthen? Where are you very good and you want to become excellent? Send your staff there, bring in top-notch staff here to help you do that. Capacity building projects, train, educate the new professionals in the priority sectors. The priority sectors inside there and at large. Jean Monnet, apply for Jean Monnet projects. We will try in the future to have a window where you compete only within the region, but for the moment you compete with the whole world. But you need to have EU integration studies more than any other part or region that we have. Thank you very much. Sorry this was longer than before.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Skikos, for a very thorough presentation and for reminding us why the EU program for cooperation in the area of education, training, youth and sport is important and how we can use it to foster the reforms and to really support what we are doing and what is our basic mission, and that is, if I'm not mistaken, in this room, education. And now there is still some room for questions in case there are any questions, suggestions. remarks from your side. Please.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank, I'm Dragica Trivić and I'm coming from Faculty of Chemistry, University of Belgrade. I'm Associate Professor. And for me, it is nice opportunity to introduce colleagues from other countries and opportunities to plan our work together in future. I think that teacher preparation and development of program for teacher preparation is important very much for Serbia and for region also. And I think that today we must think how can we improve competencies, teacher competencies generally, that enable the better preparation then for work with youth and their preparation in contemporary world with so many changes during each day. But I have one dilemma. I think that I have some idea about some programs for teacher preparation and some modules for teacher preparation. But now I'm worrying about the procedure. Every new program must pass through process of accreditation. And at this moment, I'd like to suggest at the same time thinking about of this procedure, how can we improve that, and how can we solve the problem with too long procedure of accreditation process of some programs. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dragana Krinović from the Faculty of Agriculture from Novi Sad. The same question from my side also. We submitted the complete documents for accreditation in June, and still we haven't received any answer from the accreditation committee. So what's the purpose of this call for joint master degrees? Yes. For this call, because we cannot complete our accreditation process by then, by February.
If I may just ask back the colleagues whether these study programs have been developed through Tempus or some EU-funded program, or they are developed in a regular way without EU funding, because this could make a difference, at least for us to understand what is the problem.
Yeah, can I ask a question, please? Bruno Glumets, I'm from Eindhoven Technical University, and I would have one question. Can you give us maybe an example of one successful project of the Jean Monnet? For me, it is a new program, so if you can give one short example about that. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Brana Stefanovic from Faculty of Dramatic Arts from Belgrade, University of Arts. And when I said University of Arts, you now understand that I am here representative of minority, art minority. And your example about sound mixing is something that drove me to ask a question. My field is even more fluid. It's sound directing. And if education is a pillar of economical growth, can we say that art is maybe one of the pillars of the education in general? And when it comes to funding, where or what is the relevance, and how is relevance judged when it comes to arts? And which part, or maybe you have some percentages, is the percent in all our free parts of our discussion that goes to arts. Maybe there was something else. Just a second. And is the role of art recognized in the founding of economical growth? And most important, can you give us any clue where to point our arrow when we aim?
Yes. I'll try to answer these before I forget, and then you prepare the next round of questions, because I think this will be a more lively group. I'll start with the last one. You have a series of questions, and the most difficult one, and I do apologize. I taught theater in gymnasia, so I feel for you. When I mentioned the sound mixing, I mentioned it because when we give support, art is very, very important for the cultural development of an individual and of a society. Just like education, no matter what you study, is very important because it hones the mind, regardless of what the subject is. But then we have to link it with economic development, as you rightly said. If you can make this link in your project, I think that will be very, very useful. And not if, I think you can make the link, it's just difficult to find it. But you have to find it and you have to make it. Art is very important. Art can be a contributor and a driver, as we said, creative industry, etc. Look at Creative Europe as well. You participate in the Creative Europe program. See if you can have a project in Creative Europe that links also the teaching section with the creative sector and businesses as well. In the capacity building sector here, for credit mobility, I think there is no problem. It's important. You can send people out. You can bring people in. For a capacity building project, yes, some priorities are more priorities than others when it comes to developing a country's economic. And I showed you what so far we have seen coming from you, coming from the region, coming from the EU. Art was not in there, but I do appreciate it is very important. But make that link, make that jump to the next step. How will it contribute to the development of the economic development? How will it give jobs? One of the sectors where maybe a good sector for job creation can be the film and the creative industry. Find these links, though, and support them in your application. And that's where you have relevance. In terms of percentage of funding going to art, our proposals are not evaluated according to the discipline. They're evaluated according to the 4 criteria, and each of the criteria get a certain points, and it's the overall points that then have a project here or there. That's why some years we have several in engineering, other years we have several in the social sciences. All of the proposals, regardless of their discipline, are judged together, are judged on the same things, and it's the highest scoring ones, regardless of what the discipline is, they get the funding. That is the best that I can do for your question. Jean Monnet, yes, I can point to your neighbor, Croatia. Croatia had and actually last year we had here in Belgrade, in this hotel, we reviewed the impact of past support in higher education programs, and there was a session on Jean Monnet. And there were several projects that came from Croatia. They start with modules, and then Center of Excellence, and then summer schools were developed. And they're still going on. In Dubrovnik, there's a summer school on EU integration that is going on completely. It is now sustainable and self-funded from the fees of the participants. There are many such examples. We had 2 questions on accreditation, and that is the procedure. I don't know that I can do something for your internal accreditation procedure. I doubt that I can. The Ministry of Education heard you, and that is it. However, what we're trying to do, and I think maybe I have to say it again, it's not the procedures that are important. It is the substance that's important. So it's not whether your teacher, how you train your teachers is an accredited course or will be accredited in 2 or 3 years. It's have you, in the way that you prepare your teachers, the latest, there she is. I was saying that, we'll wait till she sits down. I'm answering your question, madam. And I'm saying that it's not the procedure that is important, the accreditation. Maybe it will happen next year or the following year. What's important is the content of your course. Do you have staff that can prepare the teachers to teach key competences and learning outcomes? Mm-hmm. Do you have enough teaching practice for your student teachers in there? Do you have new teaching methodologies? That is what is important. I cannot solve the length of your procedure. That's internally with your Ministry of Education, and they've heard it. What is important and where you should focus, both you and the other lady here, is on the quality of your program. The process, hopefully, it will be shortened, but you have a long way to go because most accreditation happened at institution level and not all programs at all have been accredited, and therefore there's a backlog and they need to go through this. But focus on the quality of your program, not the process and the procedure.
If I may just add, the arts was funded under Tempus. One of the projects supported the development of study programs, and the other one employability of students, and the other one is managed exactly by your faculty. You are the man, okay, so you know it. But the employability of students is important in the EU programs, and certainly the employability of students of arts and the possibility to have more opportunities in their future work life is also extremely important. When it comes to the accreditation procedure, we have been conducting a very thorough and a very useful discussion with the Commission for the accreditation, and in the past they were willing when it comes to the EU-funded project, because the EU-funded project has deadlines and a certain plan that has to be respected. They were always willing to support it and even to have a little bit procedure that is a little bit faster than in the usual sense. But we all know that our Commission for Accreditation changed their management recently. So something that has been, I'm not working in the Accreditation Commission, but something that was submitted in June this year. Now we are in November, so usually it is a normal time frame for the Commission for Accreditation. So we hope that whatever is the problem will be solved. When it comes to the Jean Monnet and other EU-funded projects in Serbia, you can also consult the project database available at our website, where you can find all Jean Monnet projects funded with the participation of Serbia. There have been, and there are several modules and one Jean Monnet chair. The subject areas are arts, again, so arts is active, EU integrations, but also some technical faculties also got Jean Monnet from the economical field, so various fields are covered, so not only one. So there are examples, and of course we are at your disposal. Now, as we are a little bit out of our time, I would like also to present our colleagues from the Erasmus Plus offices in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Montenegro, our colleague Suid Muhibic. So could you please get up so that our colleagues from program countries can identify you? And because there are not so many participants from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and also his colleague Diana is with him, I suppose, please. And colleague Ranko from Montenegro is also here, and we're also grateful for our colleagues. So not only to have the girls from the national agencies, but also to have some colleagues, to have at least a good balance in education, which is important, as it is open to everyone. And now I would also like to stress that our colleagues from national agencies are wearing their badges with orange color, so you can identify them very easy with that one. And before we proceed outside of this room, I would like also to ask that now we are going to have a group photo in front of the hotel, but after that we will have two sessions running in parallel. One is the fair in the networking room, the Ivo Andrić room, that is on the left side of the hotel, and on the same side of the hotel, but a little bit right, when you look into the networking room, is the room called Lavender, and there we will continue immediately after a group photo with presentations of the higher education systems. The first one will be from Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I hope that this event will be useful, and I really would like to thank our speaker, Mrs. Helene Skikos, for a very useful insight. Thank you.
I won't be here later. I'd like to wish you very good networking. lots of good projects, good matchmaking, and hopefully many marriages.